everybody. I am driving. From mom and dad and taking her back home right now. I don't know how the quality is going to be because I'm driving, but I will do my best to speak clearly so that we can, get a quality recording. Okay, what I wanted to talk about today is a couple of books I've been reading or have read in the last couple of months. So one is Race After Technology, which is a book that I just read, and then before that was Between the World and Me, and both of them are so good. Both of them are written by Black people, Black scholars. Race After Technology is probably less known, but it's written by a Princeton professor and researcher who studies science and technology and the intersection of science and technology and critical race theory, which is real cool. And really what she says in that book that I wanted to share in this podcast is how it's something that I think many people say, and it's something that I have thought myself but didn't quite know how to express, which is that we have in the US this infatuation with using technology to solve all of our social problems, and feel that if only we just all of us were relying on technology, or that if there was a lot of technology used, somehow that we would all be cured from racism or whatever, everything would be equal. Also, I am just noticing that there's a Black Lives Matter march right on Rainier and MLK, and I'm turning around because they have the intersection blocked, which I am not mad about at all. This happened a week ago too. I just turned around and used a different road, but people are still out and protesting police brutality, but even more than that, I think just the way Black people are treated in America in every facet of life, whether it's education or healthcare. I mean, you just name it. Anything that we do in this country, we mistreat Black people in it. And I think that, whenever I go to places like right now, I just went to PCC, there's a discomfort that I feel that it's always hard for me to explain why, because it's sort of well, I'm a paying customer, why do I feel uncomfortable? But it's you never feel like places are your space or you feel comfortable in as a Black person, because white people just have this dominant power over everything that even without them, the fact that they just consider themselves the norm and the way operate as the norm just makes them difficult to be around and exhausting to be around, honestly. But that being aside, in terms of the book, the book, like I said, really thinks about how technology, not she kind of divides it, there are type of technology that are explicitly trying to be racist, right? So she talks about how the alt-right and how they are using social media like Twitter and things like that to spread their anti-Black conversation, and even sometimes organized violence against those they believe are their enemies or whatever. But then she talks about a lot of people who not there, or technologies that try to ignore race and how they're developing it. So they kind of act well, it doesn't have anything to do with race. We're just working on whatever, right? It doesn't have anything to do with race, and they ignore it. And when they ignore it, how race just ends up, or racism and white supremacy just ends up being present anyways, whether they decide to ignore it or not. Because if you know anything about AI and computer learning or whatever, that those technologies utilize the data that all humans in the US are inputting into the world, and those people are biased, and so of course like the data is going to be biased. Okay, go. All right, you are hella confused. Anyways, that was a lady who almost crashed into me. But anyways, yeah. So, and then the third section, she says, the third kind of way that race shows up is that there are people who try to reform things, and when they try to form this, they don't really think about things through, and because they're not doing it very intentionally or with community that's most impacted, so they actually make things even worse, or like they don't really accomplish their goal of being anti-racist. So anyway, so she gives so many good examples. Like there was, I guess, something called Beauty AI, and it was a way to do a pageant where they just use computers to do it rather than people to judge. And so they thought, well, this AI thing like is gonna judge better, right? Better than I'm still in the wrong place. Is going to judge better than humans because humans are biased, but like a computer wouldn't be biased. Well, what they found is like the AI thing picked almost everybody who was white to be beautiful, and then so that was just an example of how like, well, the data that we're using is biased, so then the computers that we're using are going to be biased too. And the fact that people don't acknowledge that blows my mind. Like, but it's like this whiteness that like just that the fact that doesn't cross people's mind. When I talk about people, I mean like computer engineers and like folks who are making these apps and these technologies. Like, they just don't think about it. Like, it's kind of crazy to me that supposedly you're really smart, right? You're a computer engineer or whatever, but you're not even really considering real life, real actual data about the human life that we live in. And I think sometimes I guess you could say it helps when you have a black person in the room, but that one black person in the room can do only so much. Like, those folks who are also designing it need to have this critical theory and need to understand it. And I think many of them probably, if they become educated about it, I do believe that they would want to include that so that they can build. They're not going to just like replicate a future that is been biased and racist. Like, I hope they think about remaking that. But anyways, that was really interesting. And then she gave really good examples of how design can be used to build a future that's more equitable, that's more inclusive and anti-racist. And she just has such a great way of describing these things. Like, for example, they created this thing where it's like it's a crime risk indicator thing, where it's a white collar crime indicator. So they tell you, like, whenever you're in the financial district in New York or London or something, it tells you, like, the app will tell you that you have entered a high risk area for crime. And so it's a flip of like how the police right now use it for kind of neighborhood level crime and tracking of people, mostly people of color, especially Latino and Black people. So it's just a cool like ways that to think about technology. Like, not everything is doomed. Like, we could do this differently, but in order to do that, we need to slow down. We need to pause. Let's not just get excited every time there's a new technology. We think, oh, it's gonna help us solve everything. Like, no, like, some things are gonna just have to be about intentionality, slowing down, including the people you haven't included, sharing power. Like, you have to do that, and there's not a short way around it. And I think sometimes that's what people are looking for, is like a short way out, a short way of like never dealing with the racism and the white supremacy culture that gives them power. And I think what this book teaches is that, like, you just have to face it, and you have to face it directly and be brave and be vulnerable and be willing to give some of your power away. Like, not away, but like, you have to share your power. And if you're not willing to do that, it doesn't matter how many new technologies you build or how many statements that you make in your website or whatever, in your value statement and all of that. It's just isn't, we're really not going to do anything different. We're going to just keep replicating the inequities, although at face value it might look different. So what such a wonderful book. Her name is Ruha, and I forgot her last name, but Ruha is her first name, and the book is called Race After Technology. It was published about a year ago, but I think there's more attention to it now because of all of the sort of Black Lives Matter movement is getting a lot of attention. Like I'm passing Columbia City, which is one of the most gentrified neighborhoods in Seattle, and there's all these white folks who have picket signs and they're saying Black Lives Matter, and I'm just passing them like smiling because I don't know, I guess that's a good thing. I'm glad, but either way, forget that. The point is that there is definitely huge attention right now being given to this Black Lives Matter movement, and there should be, and it should have been all along, but at least it's here now. And how one of the ways we can think about this is through this technology and science, since that's where we're all headed. So just wanted to come and say that. And yeah, all right, I hope you all are doing well, and talk to you guys soon. I'm going to try to do every week, but we will see. Just wanted to come out in here saying that. All right, bye.